What no one tells men about supporting a woman's career here is the brutal truth. You just told your partner you're proud of her promotion, and somehow you're now sleeping on the couch. You said all the right words, showed up to her celebration dinner, even posted about it on social media. So why does she seem more distant than ever? At Brutal Relationship, we cut through the surface level advice and dive into the uncomfortable truths that actually transform partnerships. This is one of those truths that nobody wants to talk about, but it's costing relationships every single day. Here's what's actually happening. Supporting a woman's career sounds simple on paper. Be encouraging, right? Show up, cheer her on, maybe help with some housework. But there's a hidden dynamic at play that most men completely miss, and it's destroying relationships from the inside out. Think about this. When your partner lands that big opportunity, gets the promotion, or starts making more money than you, something shifts. Not just in the relationship, but in you. And before you say, "Not me, I'm different," let me show you how this actually works. Your conscious mind genuinely wants to support her. You believe you're being supportive. But there's this other layer, this subconscious pattern that starts running in the background like malware on a computer. Let me paint you a picture. Jake's girlfriend Emma got offered a director position that required relocating to another city. Jake's immediate response was supportive. He said yes, told her to take it, promised they'd make it work. 6 months later, they're fighting constantly. Jake can't figure out why he feels so irritable around her. Emma can't understand why Jake, who said he supported her, now seems to resent every late night she works and every business trip she takes. Here's where it gets interesting. Jake wasn't lying when he said he supported her. He genuinely believed he did, but what he didn't realize was that his entire identity had been unconsciously built around being the primary provider, the one who made the big decisions about where they lived and how they built their life together. Emma's success didn't threaten their relationship. It threatened his sense of who he was. So what do you do when you recognize this pattern in yourself? You need to understand that this isn't about being a bad person or a secret misogynist. This is about societal programming that runs so deep you don't even know it's there. You grew up watching men be the breadwinners. You absorbed thousands of subtle messages about what it means to be a man in a relationship. Those messages don't just disappear because you intellectually disagree with them. But here's what most people miss. The real challenge isn't just dealing with your own internal resistance. It's recognizing that supporting her career means fundamentally restructuring the relationship in ways you never anticipated. It means your schedule now revolves around hers sometimes. It means the restaurant you choose for dinner might need to be near her office, not yours. It means when she has a big presentation, your needs take a back seat that day. Let that sink in. Because this is where the disconnect happens. Men think supporting their partner's career is an emotional exercise. Be proud of her, encourage her, tell her she can do it. That's kindergarten level support. Real support is operational. It's logistical. It's about completely reimagining how your household functions. Here's the thing. When Marcus's wife started her business, he thought he was being supportive. He told everyone how proud he was. He didn't complain when she worked late. But he still expected her to handle the school pickup, manage the grocery shopping, and coordinate their social calendar. In his mind, her business was an addition to her life, not a restructuring of their entire family system. 6 months in, his wife broke down crying, saying she felt more alone than when she was single. Now watch this closely, because this is the pattern that plays out in thousands of relationships. Marcus genuinely couldn't see what he was doing wrong. He wasn't stopping her from working. He wasn't telling her to quit. He was even bragging about her to his friends. But he had never asked the crucial question that separates performative support from actual support. What has to change in my daily life for her success to be possible? Think about this for a second. When a man pursues a big career move, there's often an unspoken assumption that everyone else will adjust. The family might relocate. The partner might reduce their hours to handle more at home. Social commitments get reorganized. Nobody questions this. It's just what happens when someone is going after a big opportunity. But when a woman makes the same move, there's this weird expectation that she'll somehow fit this massive career advancement into the existing structure without disrupting anything. She's supposed to be ambitious and still make sure everyone's dentist appointments are scheduled. She's supposed to negotiate million-dollar deals and also remember that your mother's birthday is next week. Here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Supporting her career means you might become the support character in the story. Not forever, not in every domain, but in this part of life her plotline takes center stage. And for most men, this triggers something primal, because we've been told our entire lives that our value comes from being the hero of the story. Let me show you how this actually works in practice. When David's partner got recruited for a high-level position in another state, they had a decision to make. David had a decent job, nothing spectacular, but solid and stable. His partner's opportunity was a once-in-a-career chance. Logically, the decision was obvious. Move, let her take the role. David find something new in the new city. But David hesitated. Not because he didn't want to move, not because he didn't believe in her. He hesitated because making that move meant admitting, out loud, that her career was more important than his. And somewhere deep in his psychology, that felt like failure. Like he was supposed to be the one with the unmissable opportunity. Like following her made him less of a man. So what do you do when you feel this way? Because pretending you don't feel it doesn't make it go away. It just makes it leak out in passive-aggressive comments, in subtle undermining, in what psychologists call ambivalent support. That's when you say encouraging things, but your actions tell a different story. The brutal truth is this. You have to grieve the version of the relationship you thought you'd have. You have to let go of the mental model where you're the primary driver and she's the passenger. And this is actual grief. It's mourning an identity, a future you imagined, a role you thought you'd play. You can't skip this step. You can't just logic your way past it. Here's what nobody tells you about this grieving process. It doesn't mean you're a bad partner. It means you're human. The men who actually succeed at supporting their partners' careers are the ones who acknowledge this discomfort instead of pretending it doesn't exist. They create space to feel the weirdness, the ego bruising, the identity confusion, without making it their partner's problem to fix. But here's where it gets interesting. On the other side of that grief is something most men never experience. It's a different kind of partnership, one that's not built on traditional roles but on genuine mutual support. And the men who make it through discover something surprising. It's actually more fulfilling than the old model. Think about this. When you're no longer locked into being the provider, the decision maker, the one who has to have all the answers, you get to be more fully yourself. You can pursue work you actually care about instead of work that pays the most. You can take risks because there's not all this pressure to be the financial backbone. You can be vulnerable without feeling like you're failing at being a man. Let that sink in. Because this is the piece that gets left out of every conversation about supporting a woman's career. It's not just about what you're giving up. It's about what you're gaining access to. But let me be clear about something. This doesn't happen automatically. You don't just flip a switch and suddenly become enlightened. There's actual work involved. Uncomfortable, ego-challenging, identity restructuring work. Here's the thing most people miss. The biggest obstacle isn't practical. It's not about who does the dishes or who picks up the kids. Those are symptoms. The real issue is that most men have never asked themselves a fundamental question about what they actually believe about gender, success, and value. Do you genuinely believe her career is as important as yours? Not in a theoretical, intellectual way, in a practical, how do we make decisions kind of way. Because this is where the rubber meets the road. When there's a conflict, whose career takes priority? When someone needs to make a sacrifice, whose career can absorb it? When you're making a big life decision, whose ambitions are driving the conversation? Let me show you how this plays out. Tom and his wife both had demanding careers. They told themselves they were equal partners, but when their kid got sick and needed someone to stay home, it was always her. When there was a scheduling conflict between his work event and hers, his took precedence. When they discussed moving cities, it was always framed around his career opportunities, with hers as a secondary consideration. Tom would have sworn up and down that he valued her career equally. But the evidence told a different story. And the crazy part is, he didn't even see it. It was so normalized, so baked into how they operated that it was invisible to him. So, what do you do when you realize you've been operating this way? Stop defending yourself. This is crucial. When she points out the inequality, your instinct will be to explain why you're not actually being unsupportive. Resist that urge. Listen instead. Because she's seeing something you can't see from inside your own perspective. Then you need to start tracking actual behavior, not intentions. Make a list of the last 10 times someone in the relationship had to compromise or adjust for the other person's career. Whose career required the adjustment? Who stayed home when the plumber came? Who rescheduled meetings for family obligations? The data doesn't lie. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. You might discover that you've been performing support while actually maintaining a traditional structure. You might realize that all your encouraging words meant nothing when it came time to make actual sacrifices, and that's hard to face. Nobody wants to see themselves as someone who says one thing and does another. But here's what's important to understand. Recognition is the first step, not the last step. Seeing the pattern doesn't fix it. You need a completely different framework for how you operate in the relationship. Think about this. In the traditional model, supporting her means helping her succeed within the constraints of her role as partner and possibly mother. It means encouraging her to pursue her career as long as it doesn't disrupt the fundamental structure where you're the lead and she's the support. In the actual partnership model, supporting her means building the entire relationship structure around both people's ambitions equally. It means some seasons of life, she's the lead. It means sometimes your career takes a back seat. It means you might be the one who switches to part-time or turns down an opportunity, because hers is more important right now. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in practice. When Rachel got an opportunity that required extensive travel, her husband Kevin didn't just say go for it. He sat down and mapped out how their entire life would need to restructure. He reduced his hours at work. He took over the primary parent role. He became the go-to person for school stuff, doctor's appointments and household management, not temporarily, not as a favour, as the new normal for this season of their life. And here's what happened. Kevin struggled at times. He felt resentful on some days. He missed aspects of his old life. But he didn't make that Rachel's problem. He found other men who were in similar situations. He worked through the identity stuff with a therapist. He gave himself permission to grieve while still showing up. 2 years in, Rachel's career had exploded in ways that wouldn't have been possible without that support. And Kevin discovered something surprising. He actually preferred this version of fatherhood, where he was deeply involved instead of peripheral. He found work that was more meaningful even if it was less prestigious. Their relationship got stronger because it was built on actual reciprocity instead of performance. So what do you do if you're nowhere near ready for that level of restructuring? You start smaller, but you start with honesty. You tell her, I want to support your career, and I'm realizing I have some internal resistance I need to work through. That's 1,000 times more valuable than pretending you're fully supportive while unconsciously sabotaging her. Here's the thing. Women can tell when your support is authentic versus when it's performative. They can feel the difference between a partner who genuinely wants them to succeed and a partner who wants to be seen as wanting them to succeed. And performative support is worse than no support at all because it's gaslighting. It makes her feel crazy for sensing the disconnect between your words and your actions. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you commit to actual support, not performance, something shifts in the entire dynamic of the relationship. She doesn't have to manage your ego around her success. She doesn't have to downplay her wins to make you feel better. She doesn't have to choose between her ambition and your comfort. And that creates space for a different kind of intimacy. One where both people can be fully themselves, fully ambitious, fully vulnerable without playing roles. Where you can celebrate her wins without feeling threatened. where she can have a bad day without worrying that you'll use it as evidence that she should quit. Think about this. The men who struggle most with supporting their partner's careers are the ones whose self-worth is entirely wrapped up in being the provider, the leader, the successful one. And that's a fragile foundation for identity. Because what happens when you lose your job, when you get passed over for promotion, when your career stalls, your entire sense of self crumbles. But when you build your identity on being a good partner, a good parent, a person who does meaningful work regardless of prestige, someone who supports the people they love by actually showing up, that's unshakable. Market crashes don't threaten it. Job losses don't destroy it. Her success doesn't diminish it. Let that sink in. Because this is the paradigm shift that changes everything. Her success isn't your failure. Her visibility doesn't make you invisible. Her ambition doesn't require your submission. These are false dichotomies created by a model of relationships that was never designed for two ambitious people building a life together. So what do you do, practically, today, to start shifting this dynamic? Have a conversation with your partner about career priorities for the next year. Not a vague, we both want to succeed conversation. A specific, whose career gets priority when there's a conflict conversation. And commit to actually honouring that decision even when it's inconvenient for you. Identify 3 household responsibilities that have defaulted to her and take them over completely. Not help with them, own them. She never has to think about them again. Examine your own career choices through a new lens. Are you doing work you care about, or are you chasing prestige and money because you think that's what makes you valuable as a man? Because if it's the latter, you're building on sand, and you're making it impossible to genuinely support her because her success will always feel like a threat to your value. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to say out loud. Most relationships can't survive 2 equally ambitious people unless both people fundamentally rethink what partnership means. The default model doesn't work. It was built for one career and one support person. Trying to fit 2 careers into that structure is like trying to fit 2 drivers into a car with one steering wheel. Someone's getting hurt. But when you build something new, when you create a partnership that's genuinely designed for 2 people with big ambitions, it's not just functional, it's transformative. Because you're not competing for limited space anymore. You're building something together that's bigger than either of you could create alone. And that's the opportunity that most men miss completely. They see supporting her career as loss of status, loss of control, loss of identity. But what they could be seeing is expansion, access to a relationship that's not built on roles and performance, access to work that matters to them instead of work that pays the most, access to being a more present parent, a more authentic person, a better partner. The men who get this, who really get it, don't look at their partner's success with resentment or fear. They look at it with genuine pride because they know they helped build the foundation that made it possible. Not through empty encouragement, through showing up, restructuring their life, working through their ego, and choosing the relationship over the performance of traditional masculinity. That's the brutal truth. Supporting a woman's career will cost you the version of yourself that needs to be the most successful person in the relationship. It'll cost you the comfort of traditional roles. It'll cost you some ego bruising and identity restructuring. But what you gain is a partnership built on something real, something that can handle both people being ambitious, successful, and fully themselves. And that's worth every uncomfortable moment of the journey.